Zoey 101 is one of the biggest shows that Nickelodeon ever dropped, if for no other reason than because they convinced myself and a whole bunch of other young people to want to go to Pacific Coast Academy, which is not a real school. Obviously, the show revolves around Zoey, and her friends for that matter, as they attend this school and all the crazy plots that follow, because it's a boarding school. They don't have any parents, which allows them to do almost whatever they really want to. The show technically ran for 4 seasons, but they probably could have dragged it out even longer if some stuff didn't happen offset. But I'm not here to talk about that, because now that I'm an adult, a married man with children, I went back and watched all of season 1. For that matter, some of the later seasons as well, but we're just gonna focus on season 1 now, because I wanted to know if everything I remembered of this show, like I guess all the fond memories that I had, was exactly the way that I would see it now. Because if they had hidden messages in this show, I figured by now, my analytical mind was going to figure it out. And because I am a Christian man, I don't know how to consider any of this without doing it from that framework. So this is my attempt to examine every single episode from season 1 of Zoey 101. Because hey, if people like this video, perhaps I'll get into season 2, season 3, and season 4. But we're just going to start off with the pilot and everything that rode from there. Because television isn't an accident. They have writers. They do. And everything that's done by those writers is on purpose. So if Nickelodeon could figure out how to convince an entire generation to basically want to attend a fake boarding school, what else might they be able to convince us of? And yes, this video is going to be done with the assumption that you've already seen the show, or at the very least you've seen most of it. So there will be a whole bunch of spoilers, just being real about it. The pilot episode of season 1 I've seen a whole bunch of times. The primary reason, because it involved basketball. Zoey and her brother, they show up to the school, their father drops her off, and as far as I know, that's the last time we see her father represented in the plot. So when she arrives, it's a all-boys school that's now transitioning to letting in girls. So the plot kind of revolves around that. She sees Chase. This is the moment when Chase falls, like he hits the flagpole, he rolls down the stairs, and at that point, we kind of getting the idea that like he's going to be interested in her. Remember, we ain't even get out the first 5 minutes. He walks into her dorm, she meets her friends, or her new friends anyway. She meets Nicole. Eventually we meet Dana, both of which are going to end up getting written out of the plot by the time we get to season 3, but it is what it is. And this episode, more or less, is really kicked off by a boys versus girls basketball game. And that happened because Zoey wants to play basketball. It's a school that didn't have a girls basketball team up until now. She sees, before we're really introduced to them, we get Logan, Chase, Michael, and a whole bunch of other randoms. I mean, just extras as far as I can tell. And they're playing basketball, and because she's kind of, going back and forth with Logan, where he's like, oh, girls can't play basketball. And she challenges him, or he challenges her to a, girls versus guys basketball game. For the rest of the episode, Zoey tries to assemble a team of girls who can go hoop. And, well, it doesn't go all that well, except for one thing. She gets these girls who can't play. Zoey's basically trying to play by herself. Her team is losing. And then we find out halfway through the game that Dana's character is actually good at basketball. She shows up to try to save the day, and they play competitively and almost beat the boys, but they lose on a buzzer beater. Logan still tries to rub it in their face, but the point has been made. Boys versus girls, the whole plot revolved around like, are girls just as good as the guys? The basketball coach invites Zoey to join the basketball team, and Dana says she'll think about doing so as well. So now you have girls on the boys basketball team, and then the episode ends with the girls celebrating, their not even a victory, I guess their performance. But because the school was an all-boys school in the past, they take a urinal that used to be, or still is in the boys' bathroom, but it's now the girls' room because it's a girls' dorm now, and they dress it up and put, some fancy flowers and so on the urinal to kind of feminize it. That is episode 1. I'm not going to spend this much time on every episode, but we're going to stop here for a second because I didn't think deeply about it. But yes, the show is about Zoey. She's in the center. It's clearly already positioning some sort of, girls are just as good as the guys. There's, no difference between the genders. Like, that's going to be something that's going to come back. I know it come back in season 2, spoiler alert, but that plot is kind of just like put there for you. And keep in mind, Logan is represented as a jerk out the gate. Michael doesn't really have much of any personality. He's just kind of there. Chase, he's the nice guy, but he's so nice that he's almost overlooked. Like, he's friends with Zoey, but I don't think she's really fully registering him as anything more than like, oh yeah, I met him. That's episode 1. But if you're new here, I want to say thank you for even making it this far into the video. I'm Ezra Garnett, and if you really want to know the truth about the hidden messages behind nostalgic TV, then you are in the right place. And if anything that I say actually connects with you, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe. But if I don't, just let me know in the comment section, because I try to read them all. And when you get to episode 2, I ain't gonna lie, it's basically forgettable, because Zoey's arguing with her new roommates. They can't really figure out some basic things. We know that Quinn is there, and that Quinn is kind of like the weird science girl. Zoey tries to move in with her, and that's an epic fail. But what matters most is that her and Chase start getting closer. Remember, we're only 2 episodes in, and Chase is at this point like pining after Zoey. He really wants to be with her. She is the object of desire. And you already have Logan telling like, hey, you gotta tell Zoey that you love her or that you're so into her. Like, again, we in episode 2. We ain't really seen much from Zoey yet to make her become this desirable. But apparently Chase thinks she is. Now, they had what he thought might be a date. It kind of falls apart because she makes up with her friends. So now he's kind of hanging out with her and her friends. And he never actually expresses what he was feeling or thinking. But he thought the relationship was moving forward to something. And that kind of falls flat. That's episode 2. I recognize there might be a B-plot somewhere in that episode, but whatever it is, can't be all that memorable. And then you get down to episode 3, about the webcam. Now, this one, it makes a whole lot of sense when I realized that Dan Schneider was the writer. But heck, Logan has the great idea to spy on the girls in their dorm. That's his great idea. You know, the one where, he puts a webcam in a bear, gives it to them as a gift. He allegedly works for, Sushi Rocks, which does the, sushi on campus, but he starts calling out of work and just spying on the girls, looking at his webcam. And Michael actually joins him, as far as I remember, where they're both looking at it, but it's really Logan's thing. The girls find out that all the things they're sharing, like all their personal stuff, is kind of getting aired out, and eventually they identified that there was a bug in the bear. So then they play this trick to kind of, get Logan to admit that he had, the camera, put in there the whole time. He gets exposed and he gets, in trouble. Once again, we're 3 episodes in, and so far we're still seeing Logan be a jerk. Chase wasn't in on the joke, but he also didn't know anything, and kind of brings up the question again, like, he's such a nice guy, like he's, so, positively, like, assuming everything is going to go well, that, he's just totally on the outside of this issue. Michael's really not having a moral compass. He's just kind of blown with the wind. The girls are the victims in this whole thing, but they do take their power back before the episode is over, and just like that, we're on to episode 4. You could argue this episode is really about Dustin, because there's a kid who's bullying him. I think the kid's name is Keith. And Zoey steps in and it kind of embarrasses him because, like, the big sister comes to the rescue. So at this point, she's trying to figure out how to defend him without actually defending him. And she comes up with this elaborate scheme, gets somebody to kind of, scare the bully, hires a janitor who plays it, like, acts as a dean to scare the bully off. And it works. Dustin feels better about himself because he tells the bully off and the guy doesn't say anything. And the whole plot kind of revolved around that. Chase is kind of shotgunning the whole situation with Zoey. Obviously, we know that he likes her, but I don't think they really get deep into that in this episode. So now we know that Dustin can't defend himself, or at least not yet. And of course, Zoey is the strong woman or the strong girl in this particular version of the plot, because she's strong enough to scare off a bully in multiple ways. And at this moment, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm starting to figure out that this show didn't have a lot of positive representations of male characters, boys or adults. But season 1 ain't over, so I'm like, hey, maybe things are going to change. Maybe I'm misremembering it or kind of seeing this differently, so let's see how it rides. So you get to episode 5, which is like a prank week situation. So the boys do a whole bunch of pranks on the girls. Obviously, that misrepresents them as bad because the girls don't want to retaliate. They finally decide, we're going to retaliate during prank week, and they dress up this, statue of the founder of the school as a girl, and the son of the founder comes, sees it, and is so offended that he's like, you know what? Bump this. We're just going to kick the girls out. This is so disrespectful. We're not going to have girls in the school. So once again, not a positive representation of men on either end. You have the adults who are like, flippant, going off the handle, and the boys who kind of instigated the whole mess. At the end of it, they do come up with an elaborate scheme where Zoey tries to take the fall so that the other girls can stay. And then, I think Logan actually does get involved along with, the guys, where basically all the kids are like, hey, you'd have to expel everybody. So I guess there's some degree of unity there, and they decide to let the girls stay at the school. But I think the damage has already been done. We've already represented the adults and the boys as less than ideal to get to this point. And I almost had to do a double take when I got down to episode 6, because we've still got another girls versus boys situation. We've been doing this practically the entire season now. And in this one, they have a JetX commercial where they have to do something as a school project. It's essentially a girls group and a boys group if we're thinking about the friends, Logan, Chase, Michael. Logan is now the leader, to clarify. He's basically the leader of the guys group, coming up with all the ideas. Why they're following him, that is another story. Michael still doesn't have a whole lot of characterization as far as I can tell. But the girls try to develop their JetX commercial, but Logan has this huge budget because his father is the movie producer. And basically the girls' project is a flop, but then they end up having some organic footage that they edit, and they use that to essentially prove, or they win the competition. They have this best project. They get, JetXs given to them as gifts. So, that little scene where she's on a little pink bike, that's the JetX. And the girls win again. The guys spend all this money following after Logan. Again, at this point, Logan is the leader of the idiots. That's how it's starting to come across to me. Because the fact that nobody else is taking accountability or leadership in any of these situations except him, I don't really get it, but hey, I didn't write the plot. And then episode 7 happens, which takes us back to the whole Chase and Zoey thing. Because he writes a school play, and when it's about to get enacted, I guess he thought that, because Zoey gets the lead and then Logan gets the lead, I guess he wanted to play the lead, but that kind of falls flat. Zoey starts to be captivated by Logan because the way he plays the character makes him more attractive, and now he's, Chase is real scared. He's like, I can't have Zoey and Logan get together. So he tries to intervene and manipulate the play around, and that kind of falls flat. But at the end of the day, Logan is a jerk. He's going to always be the jerk. That's just how his character is. So, Zoey basically gets frustrated with him at the end of the play. And instead of kissing him, she kind of, disses him in public, and everything kind of, plays out like that. I mean, Chase doesn't really get what he wants, just being real. But at the bare minimum, Logan doesn't get Zoey, so it makes him happier, I guess. So more than halfway through the season, I've kind of figured out 2 things. Zoey is clearly the object of desire. She's like kind of the queen of the show. Yes, her name is in it, but we haven't gotten a lot of characterization for everybody else. Like Nicole is pretty flat. She's just kind of like the boy crazy, I don't want to call her, an idiot, but she's just not offering a whole lot of intellect. Quinn is also kind of, weird and awkward, but she's a genius. I mean, Dana is kind of flat. I mean, we don't really get much of anything. She's just kind of, rude and kind of in the background. And then the boys are just kind of following after Logan be a jerk all the time. Even we saw the adult males, they're not represented in the best light. Just being real. But episode 8 does give a little bit more depth to some other characters. Because now Quinn has a crush on a guy named Mark Del Figolo, who becomes a reoccurring character through the show. And, Zoey tries to help her, figure it all out. Zoey and Chase try to help her to do a whole double date thing and try to, make it feel like, Quinn's on a date, even though Mark doesn't know that he's on a date. But apparently this Mark character actually has a girlfriend who finds out, and it kind of blows up their relationship. I mean, Quinn and Mark actually do have a thing after this is done, but we got to see Chase kind of have the moment of pretending to be dating Zoey, so that kind of gives him a little bit of boost of confidence, I guess. And the episode just kind of, ends off on kind of the funniness of, them trying to make this love connection work, and then it failing, but then working. It just kind of is what it is. And if you're keeping score at home, about half of the episodes up until this point have more or less had romance as a core tenet of the plot. Just saying. The next episode is about Spring Fling, and to be real, I only remember it because Drake Bell was there. The girls are, I guess, on the Spring Fling planning committee. I don't really know why the guys aren't that big a deal a part of this, but anyway, they're trying to figure out how to raise money to get Drake Bell. Apparently they needed $5,000. They struggle to raise the money. A whole bunch of things go down, try this, try that, got the money, lost the money, ruined the car. And at the end of it, Drake Bell showed up because they said they had the money and then they didn't. But he does the concert anyway because he gets to use a t-shirt design that they had, I guess one of them had done, I don't know if it was Zoey or one of the other girls. And because of that t-shirt design, he just does the concert for free. So it's really more of a promo for Drake Bell as a singer, because we've seen him on Drake and Josh. But this is when he's crossing over more as an artist, I think, more seriously. I mean, hey, it's Nickelodeon. They're, cross-promoting their own stuff. So I ain't really mad at it. I think that's more or less the whole plot. I mean, I'm sure something else happens, but it ain't that serious. And episode 10 after that, I honestly forgot it even happened until I went back. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember watching that. Multiple times, because, this is the cable era. You gotta watch things when they're actually on. So it was a backpack episode where something happens to Nicole's backpack. Zoey swoops in to save the day and does some crazy design. People love it. And then people want to buy her backpack. So she starts, basically makes her own little, small business, a little side hustle, trying to dress up backpacks and make them cool for the school. I wasn't trying to rhyme. It just is what it is. And then there's a girl. Her name is Stacy, but the girl who plays Stacy, I think that's her name. She's the girl who plays, Josh's girlfriend, the one who, hates him, but then, eventually they find their way to a relationship in Drake and Josh. That girl. But that's the actress. She steals Zoey's design, and then when she does, she uses it to sell it to the school store, and then Zoey's kind of upset about it, but then Zoey makes an even better backpack, and And then the school store decides, you know what, we're going to take that one. And, Stacy's upset because it's like, oh, snap, I got played even though I tried to play you. So it's kind of like, the girls actually, fighting against each other in this particular one. And again, the guys, like, there's a B plot with Quinn trying to create a banapple, like cross, an apple and a banana and like make something out of it. And it has like this acidic juice that it ends up producing. But that's not really serious. It's just straight comedy on the other end of the plot. But episode 11 does technically give us adults in the plot again. Because now there's like this gym teacher who's really not paying attention at all. He's just making the kids run laps. And they're showing how hard and how, it's hot and nobody wants to do it. So the kids, like Zoey and her friends, they all come up with this plan to get out of gym class by being on the sports team. So they make up their own sports team. They decide they're going to do a disc golf team. Like, that's what they came up with. It's like frisbee golf. And they're all trash at it. But Nicole is really trash at it. And apparently Logan is good. So they have Logan join the team. And the reason it matters is because they have to win a game to be recognized as a real varsity team. Otherwise, they won't be able to, actually get out of gym class. Like, it's just kids playing with frisbees. So they set up a game. And they set up a game against a juvenile detention center. They just did that for the plot, I guess for entertainment. The juvenile detention kids are actually good. But, they play, it goes back and forth. And then Zoey feels bad because, Nicole's been left out because she's not good and they kind of had her not play. So she puts Nicole in the game, basically on like the game-winning point. And Nicole is still trash, but when she throws the frisbee all crazy, what ends up happening is it's a situation where like the kids in the juvenile detention center, they kind of run off and they like try to make a break for it. So they end up forfeiting. So Zoey and her team win and they get out of gym. Now, I'm pretty sure this is the same episode where Quinn does an experiment with Michael trying to, break his addiction to potato chips. You see, Nickelodeon's done this a few times where they try to have a discussion about addiction, but they just do it with something that's not, like actual hard drugs. So regardless, he gets like these potato chips that she sprays something on him to make them healthy, but then he can't speak, so it like slurs his speech. So it's almost like he's, high or drunk in a whole different way. And, it is what it is because he refuses to give up the potato chips. It's just, he's trying to find ways to get through it. That's the B plot. But hey, it is what it is. As a matter of fact, it even gets to a point where it's not even just his speech. Like, he can't walk straight. Like, I remember this, like, off head. See, Michael doesn't really get much serious development. He's always the butt of the joke as far as I can tell. But the next to last episode of the season is the one I remember the most for multiple reasons. It's a school dance episode, more romance talk. There is supposed to be like a special matchup where you do a personality quiz and they give you your perfect match to go to the school dance. How do they know who's at the school? Do you have your perfect match? And are there enough boys and girls to even match up? They don't address that. But the way that they solve it is that for the purpose of the plot, Michael gets matched up with an exchange student named, Ali or Olivari or whatever. So because they do this matchup between these two, and I think the kid who plays Ali, I think he plays one of the lackeys in Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Like, how Loomer has like his homeboys who just be rocking with him. I'm pretty sure he plays one of the homeboys. And now Michael is matched up with a guy. That is important because yes, it's in the name of comedy, but none of this is accidental. These are adults coming up with these plots. So you're introducing the idea of two boys being together. Then they actually ended up going to the dance and having some fun, but the boy does have a sister and the sister meets Michael and we don't see the sister or Ali again, but just kind of happens all the way at the end of the episode like, oh yeah, that's there. The real plot, the real one, is supposed to be that Chase wants to get with Zoey. He tries to fake his answers on the personality test to get with her. And there's another guy who she does get matched up with. She chooses to go with him to the dance. And then she finds out that both of them fake their answers, which is really weird. So they both fake their answers to match with Zoey. And she gets mad at Chase, like, specifically because the other guy, she's like, oh, you're a jerk, forget you. But with Chase, she's like, yo, you were supposed to be my friend. And now Chase comes up with, some like, oh, I wanted to protect you or whatever. And she just kind of lets it slide. I think they were like even skipping stones or something like that. Like, I remember seeing that in the scene, like, skipping stones on the water. I guess it's supposed to be semi-romantic. Gets back to the whole will they, won't they. But, they're still just friends at the end of this episode. So the school dance, that happened. And then the grand finale of season 1 is the beach party episode where the semester is ending and the kids are supposed to go celebrate on a beach party, but Quinn does another experiment that knocks everybody out, they fall asleep, and they can't actually go to the beach. So they try to take a taxi, all the kids, and they take it 100 miles in the wrong direction to the wrong beach. So now they're out there secluded with no cell reception. So they decide, we're just going to party anyway. Kid logic. We're just going to party anyway on the secluded beach, but eventually Quinn comes up with an experiment or a way to kind of, boost cell phone range so they can get a call out. And one of their teachers comes with a truck and picks them all up and drives them back to the campus when it's all done. That is Zoey 101 Season 1. And these are my final thoughts. Because after all of that, I finally started to figure out, from the jump in this show, it's always been positioned as girls versus guys. Because I didn't even have this thought much till I watched Zoey 102. I ain't talking about that right now. But seeing the way men were portrayed in that movie, the reboot movie, made me think, like, were we always doing this? And yes, we were always doing this. You've got Logan the jerk, who's apparently the leader of everybody, so I guess that makes him the leader of the jerks, the men. And then you have Chase, who's the nice guy, but he's too nice. He's a pushover. So much so that his own feelings get trampled over, like his feelings for Zoey. And because he's too nice, that's a whole nother conversation about how men and women relate. I think that's why she doesn't really see him as a romantic love interest, or like, that's not articulated. Because he's interested in her the whole time. Like, their friendship is hinging on him wanting to be with her. And she doesn't seem to get that, at least not in season 1. Then you have Michael, who's just there for comedy. He's just kind of blown with the wind, whichever way the plot is taking him. And he's the one who they don't mind kind of just chucking to the side because they feel like he's just there for comedy. Dustin exists, and he's just there to kind of show that Zoey has someone to protect. I guess Zoey has someone to, show up for or look out for. So I guess it just further adds to, like, her being the strong woman in the plot. And Zoey has friends. Her friends are, maybe not as developed as they could be going forward. Because she is just kind of like, the savior. Because it's called Zoey 101, and the 101 is for her room. But it's almost like she's kind of like supposed to be like engaging with the world, but at times it feels like she's teaching the world how to function. She's the one who's like always on the moral high ground. We rarely see Zoey kind of waver as anything less than, I guess, the object of desire or almost being perfect in the context of the plot. Everybody, even if she does something wrong, like the whole episode with, where she almost gets expelled, like she's nobly stepping up saying, okay, fine, expel me, not everybody else. And on top of that, it's like, oh, this was all done in retaliation to the boys instigating and all the problems they created because we didn't even want to get involved in this mess. I'm pretty sure that if we actually dignify the writers for a moment with what they gave us for season 1, all of it is about boys and girls. Specifically how they relate. Are they equal? Are they the same? Obviously, there's a whole lot of elevation. If you can go down to the first episode, there's a lot of boys versus girls episodes. The girls always come out looking like, the better sex by the time it's done. Always. Please. Let me know if I missed something when it comes to that, because it feels like they're always on that plane. So at that point, it's really not equal. It's like, girls are better. That's kind of where we're going with this. And they do seem to frame the majority of the plot around romance, specifically women, or in this case Zoey, as the objects of desire. Like, the men having to achieve or kind of, be enough for them. I mean, Chase spends the entire season, from the first time we see him, they keep revisiting it, where he's trying to get with Zoey, and she's more or less oblivious. I'm not saying the show is bad. I enjoyed it when I first watched it, and even looking back now, I still see some merits to, what the show has to offer. Clearly slants in a particular direction, and that direction is feminism. What you feel about that, that's not what we're here to discuss. I'm just calling a spade, and I believe they continue to use Logan's character in the center, because I didn't realize how much he was pushed to the forefront and they faded the other boys, Chase included, to the back. Because for the girls to be, looking great, you kind of need, I guess the word would be an antagonist, but you kind of need an enemy on the other end. And Logan is the perfect enemy. They don't do anything to make us really feel a sense of care for the character. He's just a bad guy who's semi-attractive perhaps to the girls, but he doesn't do anything positive. Remember, the webcam thing, that's all him for the most part. And he doesn't really share much remorse until he gets caught. So perhaps Zoey 101 and their fake boarding school Pacific Coast Academy, at least through the first season, are not exactly what I remembered. But season 2, which I do intend to go over, will move the needle for this show in a direction. The only question is that direction actually going to be a good one? Because whether or not you want to believe it, when it comes to television, especially when it's aimed at children, nothing the adults come up with is an accident. If you actually made it all the way to the end of this video, I do have to admit that thank you doesn't do it justice anymore, because you are a real one. And if anything that I said at all actually connected with you, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe.